Hi, my name is Ryan Boda, and this is Advanced Session Recordings Producer Podcast. I had some trouble this time around deciding what kind of producer I actually wanted to look for. A lot of times I was looking for the major producers, but I decided this time around to find someone that I have been listening to for a long time without even knowing it, and maybe not too many people do know him. With that said, I chose Dave Bottrill, initially because of his producing work on the band Circa Survive's album Blue Sky Noise and their most recent EP, the Appendage EP. Along with that, he's also producing my favorite metal band's new EP. The band is Between the Buried and Me. After I started finally going into researching him, I realized that he does range doing producing, mixing, and engineering, and I've been listening to his stuff for years. And before I was ever really into music, I was pulling out parts that, like, years later, I realized that were probably his fault, basically. In 1995, he worked on a King Crimson album. He engineered Thrack by King Crimson, and that I haven't listened to that too much, but I am a King Crimson fan. From beyond there, he did Mudvayne's follow-up to their LD50 album, which had that single dig, which, I mean, I guess if you know Mudvayne, you knew him from that album. But their follow-up, The End of All Things to Come, which is a much more, I find it a much more professional-sounding album, and he also did work on that album. He was the mixer for Coheed Cambria's Good Apollo, Volume 1, Fear Through the Eyes of Madness, Good Apollo 1. And he mixed that whole album except for the first single off that. And that was actually a big album for me growing up, mainly from being a bass player. I really loved the bass on that tone, and I realized that throughout his mixes, his bass always has maybe not the same, it's not the same bass tone, but it does have a lot of similar qualities, especially when it gets towards like a low, slight fuzz bass that actually really stands out. And in an interview, he was saying that he likes to keep the bass below the kick drum, which I didn't really get at first, and I haven't really heard. But after listening to his mixes, I realized how perfect that description is, and I don't know, I think it really adds to his albums. He actually did the original mixes for Dream Theater's Scenes from My Memory. And it wasn't until right before that it was released that they were going to keep his mixes. But John Petrucci, who co-produced the album, he actually decided he wanted a thicker mix with more guitars. So they went and remixed some of those, and only 4 of Dave Bottrill's mixes actually stayed on the album. But the funny thing is that it was tracks 1, 9, 10, and 12. And track 9, Dance of Eternity, is probably my favorite Dream Theater song, especially with the mix, because it's a lot more open and clear. And listening to it, actually, after thinking about the different mixes on the album, he does have a much cleaner, more balanced mix, as opposed to other songs on that album, which have a lot more guitars, and it just basically is kind of muddy compared to it. And noticeably, actually, in that album, his keyboards and his mix tend to be a bit more louder, not overbearing, but at least more prominent, and especially with Dream Theater, where the keyboard parts are kind of key to the songs. He also, I don't know why I even didn't bring this up first. He produced, based actually because of his work with King Crimson, Tool came to him for their, actually both of their albums, Aenima and Lateralis. And I was originally going to look to do Cynthia Massy for this, but it turns out that it was him too. And those albums, I mean, I don't really have to say anything to anyone about Tool. But yeah, also he did Muse's Origin of Symmetry, which is another great album for bass. And I don't know, I guess I just kind of envy him more, actually, to be able to do mixing, engineering, and recording. And I'm really glad that I did this project. And I'm actually going to start doing this more often. All right, thanks. Ryan. Again, this is Ryan Boda for Advanced Session Recording.